Hello. I'd like to take a few moments and consider an idea. I call it saving the best for last. That when we go and we engage donors or prospective donors and we intend to make a solicitation, I believe it can be most effective and impactful to save that solicitation for later in the call. Now, this has to do with call structuring, really. That we use what takes place earlier in the call to make this conversation finally about what we'd like them to do next with and on behalf of our organization, investing and partnering with us. To make that part of the conversation as powerful and as poignant as possible. So what I'll do is I'll save that, the very best, for last. So I enter into an interaction, an exchange with the donor, and fairly early on as we're settling into the visit, I will kind of summarize why I'm there. I will say, Mary, I sure appreciate your taking the time to visit with me today. And there's several things I'd like us to talk about. I'd like to talk about your volunteer service at the university, to talk about how that's been going and perhaps some ways that could be augmented. I want to talk about a particular concern that I would detail about the university to get your thoughts about this as your good counsel. And then we'll talk about your philanthropy. And then, we will go on. And I will approach those topics from that point on in our visit in that order. But what happens is, as soon as I give them the key, your philanthropy, they get thinking. They begin feeling, oh, Martin's here to talk about my philanthropy. He's here to talk about some resources from us, from me. Mary's beginning to think, boy, what does he want from me now? How much? Will I be able to say yes? Will I want to say yes? I don't want to disappoint Martin, but I may have to. I have other considerations. How much if he asks me for something? What does he have in mind? And what that does is it builds up a certain anticipation, sometimes fear, sometimes discomfort, uneasiness. It gets them thinking about what matters most in our call, their next round of support for the institution. And this is a good thing. Introducing tension, introducing a certain amount of discomfort earlier on, I believe, prepares the donor to be absolutely alert, focused, keyed in, wide awake, listening to every word when we finally get to saving what we've saved for the last. So, in this call structuring, I will also introduce commentary earlier in the call to help reinforce this. A theme that I'll talk about at another time. Leadership from the front, if it's appropriate, I'll develop that theme. I'll oftentimes give them a fundraising update about the institution. And if some peers of theirs had recently made additional support or gone to a new milestone, as we call it, in their cumulative giving, I'll talk about that if I can. I'll talk about that individual, those circumstances, the size, the nature of the gift. Again, this is to set up what I will ask from them later in the call. And then eventually I will get us there. Now sometimes the donor doesn't want to wait. They want to let me know something. Like they're not in a position to make any gift at this point in time. Or they just want to know, and they'll kind of introduce philanthropy earlier in the call because they want to deal with it. They want to get these feelings kind of expressed, released, this tension. Now, sometimes that's fine, But I believe I need to communicate additional things. There's additional messages, information I want to impart before we get to that discussion about philanthropy. I will continue on my course. So recently at a brunch, and I had another fundraiser with me, Deb Godwin, we were talking with a donor, and in fact this donor did that. And I said to the donor, well, I appreciate your sharing that with us. And then I went right back on to what I wanted to lay out for the donor. So that when we then got to more, when I was ready, as you might say, when we were ready to have that talk about philanthropy, more was in place. A context was now created in which to have a fuller discussion of philanthropy and what we want them to do and what we would hope them to do. And so, saving the best for last. It is the best, right? We are saving the best for last, a request for additional involvement and support. Why? Because to the extent that they can be responsive, to the extent that they desire to be responsive, it's going to enrich and ennoble their life. Their investment in people, in needs, in opportunities, in aspirations for our organizations will only increase their satisfaction as human beings because they're making investments of themselves and their resources that will help others. So we are saving the best for last. Well, I'd like to know what you think about this subject. Maybe you structure your call similarly. Maybe you have a different approach. If so, I would like to hear about it from you, or about anything else on your mind that has to do with fundraising. And we have our forums available through which to do so. Please go to the forum and let us know. Let me know what you're thinking. I'd really be interested. I would like to learn from you. And I thank you very much for listening today.